But we're turning our attention now to UFC and, well, the events at the weekend. Obviously, Andy Lee was part of our Saturday panel discussion talking about the difficulty that Conor McGregor might have with motivation after having reached the level of success and fame and celebrity and wealth that he's had. Andy made a few particularly salient points about how difficult it might be to keep up that level of motivation, particularly when you're fighting somebody like Khabib in the octagon. Have a look.
You won't know, you know, until the bell rings and he's in there and it's getting tough. That's when you'll find out how much you want it.
Yeah.
Because up to this point, it's still the same, you know, the buzz that he's always had, and it's always been a good outcome. But he'll know when he's in there. Like he came back from the Diaz fight. Obviously, he's shown then he probably had enough money then to retire before that loss. Yeah. And he showed then that he had this heart and desire to come back and win the rematch. And you know, since then he's won fights, and now he's fought Mayweather. Now he's come back to fight the toughest challenge out there. So you have to say, on the evidence that's there, he has the desire. He's not taking an easy route. He's not like living off his name and like taking so.
And the money, as you say,
he'll only find out when he's in there and it's tough, and he's it's late in the rounds and it's getting hard.
You have to make a call.
Yeah.
So as you can see there, Chris Fields was part of that panel on Saturday. He's with us again. How are you?
All good.
We can talk about the money in a couple of minutes' time. Before we get to the breakdown of the fight, because actually that is something that I haven't heard covered that much since, right? My take on the UFC is that they've encouraged all this mayhem, and they have to bear responsibility for encouraging the mayhem, and that actually, I don't believe a word Dana White says when he's like, "Oh, I'm not even angry, I'm disappointed." Like, come on.
Yeah, I think like when you when they use the stuff from the bus incident in the build up to the fight, they've kind of stoked the fire a bit. I think if there was a rematch, I wouldn't be surprised if they used the footage from that fight. I think it's gone like a bit of a nasty route. Like you know, I'd say it'd be hard pushed to find any fight promotion, whether it was boxing or K1 or anything, that wouldn't do the same, because it's going to make the most money. But I don't think that's always the aim. Like, what people need to understand here is that the UFC is a promotion, not a sport. So their interest is to make the most money they can.
Especially after they sold for billions.
Yes, and they're sold to an entertainment company, which doesn't bode well for the sporting aspect of it. Obviously, they have the best athletes and they're going to have the best fights in the octagon, but this kind of stuff is just, as it were, a skid mark in the underpants of MMA.
Yeah, I think the big loser from the weekend was the MMA fan who were into the sport before Conor McGregor took to the UFC, before it exploded into the mainstream like the sport had never seen before, because it became this marriage between an organisation and a sport for a lot of passing fans that was inseparable. And now, to a certain extent, whether you like it or not, the UFC is responsible for the image of mixed martial arts. And of course, after what we saw on Saturday night, they're not exactly controlling that image in a great way.
No, not at all. Like this is the reality of the situation. I watched that fight. I went to bed. I got up and I got one of my fighters and drove up to. We drove up to Antrim, and he was competing at an amateur level, you know. And everything's, you go up, there's 500 people in a room. This guy's trained his ass off, got everything ready. No crap, as it were. Didn't do anything wrong. Went in and fought, and you see the sport at its like beautiful best, you know. And guys smashing up buses or jumping out of cages is not that, really. I'm not going to sit here and defend it. You can't defend it. It's wrong.
Such a great card as well up until that point. Even without the main event, it would have been probably, some people would have been saying it was one of the best UFC cards we've ever seen, even if you take away.
Which is the problem, because everyone was watching. So you had like the highest numbers, the highest viewership probably ever for a UFC, and then that goes on. So yeah, you'd be right in, and I would have thought the same, that, you know, the UFC haven't exactly like nipped this kind of behaviour in the bud. They've
encouraged it. Yeah, they have encouraged it.
Yeah, they have. It made more money for them.
Really, they're pretending they don't, but like will actually ultimately. So like, always talking about the casual fan who substitutes UFC for MMA and makes no effort to never do it. It's like it's the same thing in their heads. Like the next time it's mentioned that Khabib is fighting, or the next time it's mentioned that McGregor is fighting, those people are still going to be like, "Ooh, I want to see what happens now after the fight in the crowd. Who was the guy in the crowd? Can they get him involved?" It's like it spirals to this point where they do lose control, I think. like the Khabib camp had the guy who sucker punched McGregor, bragging on social media afterwards.
I saw that.
Yeah.
He's
There's
been
the picture of Khabib. Will you stick the picture back up there?
He's been fired, that guy. He's been had all the guys from his team that were in the UFC.
That's
this guy, yeah. Knuckle dragger.
Kareem Zidane is the journalist who's translating that, saying that I slapped him as promised. I promised to make him answer. And so he's been fired by Khabib?
By the UFC.
By the UFC?
By the UFC. He's
Okay,
a UFC fighter. So him and the other guy that jumped in, I think it was 3 in total. 3 of them were fired by the UFC. Which is good. But we'll see how they treat Khabib after this, you know. I don't like they've put it on the commission, because realistically this is where, for me, the UFC needs to step up, and like he needs to be banned for a while, you know. If that was football, like the FA in England would ban the player, you know.
Yeah.
So the UFC, they shouldn't be relying on the Nevada State Commission to do it. It should be the UFC saying, even if the commission clear him, we're not going to let him fight.
Yeah.
You know? That would be my view.
And the thing is, though, that even unless they ban him for like a 2-year period, which clearly won't happen, because he's now their cash cow.
He's their new money maker.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about why he's their moneymaker, because he was absolutely dominant in that fight.
Yeah.
It was, from the McGregor camp, it was pretty much textbook how they wanted it not to go.
Yeah, look, actually, if you watch the first couple of exchanges, Conor did quite well defending the wrestling. He did really well defending the single leg. One little mishap with he was stuffing the head to the outside, bringing Khabib's hips up, so it makes it really difficult. And Conor, being quite athletic and flexible, was kind of bending in weird contortionate ways to stay up. Did really well for like a 40-second period of him trying to bully him to the mat at the very first takedown. And then Khabib happened to get a hold of Conor's far ankle, which kind of led to the downfall. And I think a couple of the things I spoke about that I wouldn't have liked to see Conor do, he did. As in, he accepted putting his back on the mat a couple of times instead of scrambling back to the feet. I remember at the time you were saying Joe Duffy had said to you he was best off, or he thought he was best off kind of relaxing in these bad situations. And I was saying I thought that was a bad idea, because Khabib's style, he'll pressure pass. And that's what he did. Conor opted for what we call butterfly. It's both your feet under the guy so you can elevate him. But to do it, you have to put your shoulders on the mat. That's always bad with someone like Khabib. He's so heavy on top. And then you're carrying that guy for a round or two, which is exhausting, obviously. Yeah. So all his weight is bearing down on you. So as the fight went on, the other thing to take from the fight is Conor's the first guy to ever take a round off Khabib in his career. He won the 3rd round. A small moral victory in itself, but that's the first time Khabib has ever lost a round in his career.
And is that Khabib taking a rest? Is that like an opportunity for the McGregor camp to say, hang on a second now, if we plot this properly and plan out everything, there's a way for us to get back into a fight with Khabib at some point in the future?
Yeah, I think like the 3rd round, the Conor detractors would say it was Khabib taking a round off. I didn't think so at all. I think it was, if Conor's fitness had been probably a little bit better, and he hadn't have maybe assumed those positions earlier on where Khabib was able to get a lot of weight and pressure down, the option might have been there to like fight for the finish there in the 3rd. Khabib was tired, tried to enter a couple of takedowns, couldn't. Looked like he'd kind of burned himself out in the first 2 rounds. In the 2nd round, he had Conor in a pretty bad position, and the fight was very close to being stopped. And I think he threw like 40 shots. A lot of them were landing on the arms. That's exhausting. Just like he was just swinging punches down Conor, blocking most of them. So I think that's what took it out of him in the 2nd, and then the 3rd, he looked pretty tired. He failed on 2 or 3 takedowns in a row, and it looked like it was starting to unfold a little bit. And just I don't know if Conor had it in the tank then to push for the finish, you know. So.
How did that flip then in the 4th round?
Well, he would have, when he failed on the takedowns, he kind of eased off and stayed standing for the rest of the round. Then he had the minute break in between. I think they were pressed against the cage. This is the round where he's talking about Conor putting his finger in the gloves and stuff like this, which is like, you know, you could call it cheating, but it's like a lot of things in sport. You find a little way around the rules. These are sly little things that everyone would do. Like he was putting his finger into the glove so Khabib can't free his hand up to grip him. This was happening against the cage at the end of the 3rd, I think it is. And Khabib seems to get pretty riled up by that. And then the minute break in between, he came out and he got the takedown fairly quickly in the 4th. So
What can McGregor do? So say if we go back to what you were talking about at the start, where you said he can't under any circumstances allow himself to go onto his back. Is that a situation where McGregor could tactically approach that a little bit different to avoid that? Or is Khabib just so bloody good in that position that it was always going to happen and there's nothing he could do about it, McGregor?
Yeah, it's a little from column A, a little from column B, in my opinion. Like, Khabib is obviously phenomenal. He's done it to so many guys before. I think when I watched his previous fights, the guys that seemed to do best against him were like guys like Quinta. That was his last fight before Conor. He scrambled straight back to his feet constantly. He didn't care about getting taken back down. What he was thinking is, if I get back up, he has to go through all the effort of taking me back down. That's the most tiring part.
Okay.
So he was I'm going to do this. He's going to get tired, and that's what happened to Khabib in the fight. He gasped pretty badly around the third and fourth, and then came back and kind of dominated towards the end again. So that would have been my approach, just keep scrambling back to the feet, don't worry about the takedown, doesn't matter. Like, I almost set out to lose the first 2 rounds with him taking you down, but using all his gas tank to do so, you know.
And that little window that between Khabib's first and second wind, do you think that was more of an opportunity for McGregor that he should have exploited a little bit more when he was gassing a little bit, that there would have been whatever, a 90-second period there where he was trying to recover?
I felt like if you watch the fight, there's a period, Conor, and it was obviously because he was tired, actually stayed in the pocket with Khabib at this stage, where realistically I would have liked to see that long distance Conor that we've seen in the past outside, pinging that straight left down the pipe. But obviously, as I said, he'd been carrying the guy for 2 rounds, so he was tired when it came around to that. So yeah, I think like Khabib kind of looked to press against the cage then and was just kind of holding there. He wasn't really like looking for he didn't have the energy to go for the takedown by the looks of things.
A lot of questions coming in. Darren Downey, can you ask Chris, was the turning point the shot McGregor took in the second, and is there a way or for McGregor preparing to make a rematch worthwhile?
The shot in the second, Conor has shown in the past, actually, a lot of people don't give him much credit for this. He's got an amazing chin. He can really take a shot. Khabib is a far inferior striker to Conor, but this is the beauty of MMA compared to any other sport, is that Conor is constantly thinking about the takedown. So when Khabib drops a level like that, all he's thinking about the takedown, then Khabib swung a big overhand, right? I don't think that happened in the second. Conor had his best round in the third. Khabib's best round other than getting the finish was the second. So he landed that shot, he got a takedown, landed a lot of shots on Conor, but then, like I said, it felt like he gassed himself out a little bit. He maybe tried for a few takedowns in the third, couldn't get them, took his foot off the gas a little, going, right, I'm either going to completely blow my wad now, I'm going to have to step back. And then Conor started to pressure him and landed some shots. I don't think the right hand was the big turning point. I would have thought that in the second round, the turning point would have been the takedown, the shots he landed. He passed at some good positions as well, which wasn't great for Conor.
Conor was illegally gripping the cage, had an illegal knee, an illegal elbow, gripped the cage, illegally held his glove. Were these signs of desperation?
You know, like most people be desperate if a big gorilla is swinging at you. You know, he's like, the guy's a monster. You know, he's phenomenal at what he did. Yeah, I suppose they are, but there's an old saying, probably maybe kids shouldn't listen to this, but if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying, you know. So you gotta be like trying everything in your arsenal to get out of these bad situations. I'd almost appreciate that he did that rather than turn over and show his back, you know.
So this is the fight game. That's the fight game right there, isn't it?
Those kind of things are okay. Like, you know, that's sport in general. Everyone looks for an edge, you know. No one's going to go, oh, I was offside there, sorry. You know, if you get away with it, you're going to take it. You know, those little things are part and parcel of the sport.
Was the fight less close than it, like?
I think
it's a dominant performance.
Yeah, it was. It was a dominant. No, I wouldn't say a very dominant performance. He lost a round, but it was a dominant performance. But I think it was like we spoke about. It was going to be whoever got their game off, and it was always going to. If Conor had got his game off, it would have looked like Khabib had no business being in there with him. Like, people would have been like, "Oh, who is this guy? What was the point?" You know what I mean? But it was Khabib who got his game off. You know.
Somebody else was asking, was the finish a neck crank? How do they work?
Yeah, so it's the same thing. It's choke, neck crank. It becomes a neck crank by you keeping your chin down. So the choke is on the neck, obviously. If you put your chin down, then it's across here and it's pulling back. So it's bringing my chin over to one side and my head the other. Not very nice. Not very nice at all. That's almost like one of those things we're talking about, like gripping the glove. Conor's keeping his chin down to stop being choked.
Yeah.
So then he's opting to go for the neck crank. It's the same idea, like, you know, the same thing.
It's your response to the...
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And when you saw that, you knew straight away.
I knew actually when he showed his back. I knew it was pretty much done at that stage. Like, you know, it's it was like a tough fight. A good performance by Khabib. Not his best performance. Like I said, in the third round, he looked beatable. You know, this has happened a couple of times where he looked gassed. I don't know if that was part of their game plan to wait for that moment, and maybe when the moment arose, Conor didn't have as much in the tank as he was planning on having, or whatever. You know, maybe he didn't think Khabib was going to feel the way he felt. Like a lot of this stuff is, you can get all the guys in you want, you can have all the training partners, you can do everything you want. Conor had he was a very good wrestling coach, but he had a couple of Moldovan guys in to help him. But I can pretty much guarantee they're not going to feel like Khabib. But you don't know that till you feel him.
Yeah.
You know, and that I've had that myself in fights. You go, oh my God, that guy's strong.
Right, okay.
You know, you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of my training partners be big dudes. Like, but you just go, oh my God, that, or like he hits your glove and you're like, oh my God, that I don't want to get hit by one of them. You know.
Yeah. Like it has been mentioned over the last 24 hours. The whole 145 thing, like, is Conor McGregor just simply too old at this moment in time to be able to go back to that level, to be able to make that horrendous weight cut, the thing that he hates so much that he's spoken about? Or is there just sort of an element where he needs to get used to this a little bit more? Is he still feeling his way into the division? Like,
yeah, I think like the 155 division is stacked, and you know. For that, like, I don't know if there's going to be a rematch. I don't know what's going to happen now, but I think like the game plan may be different next time around, and they might approach it a bit differently. I think Khabib is beatable. I think that was shown in that fight for me. I know a lot of people would have watched it and just went, that was a very dominant performance, and it was, but I could see the gaps, I could see the holes that could be exploited. I think the division's a bit strange at the moment, so there's like a little triangle, and a lot will depend on what happens with Khabib, and in my opinion, he shouldn't be fighting anytime soon, for what went on. But there's a triangle there. There's Tony Ferguson, there's Conor, and there's Khabib. I think Khabib-Tony makes a very intriguing fight. I think Tony has a phenomenal jiu-jitsu game off his back and a real pressure game on the feet. And I think he could beat Khabib. I think his style could beat Khabib. But then I think Conor beats Tony fairly easy, because Tony gets hit and you don't get hit by Conor. You know what I mean? So I think there's a weird little triangle there. And then I don't know what way, if Conor does things correctly, can he beat Khabib? I don't know if he can. So if Khabib can, or if Conor can't beat Khabib, Khabib can't beat Tony, but Conor can beat Tony. You have a weird triangle going on where that belt could bounce around between the three of them for a while.
Yeah, and
which makes for that was the highlight, the greatest time in boxing was that these guys, it was that middleweight division where Hagler was beating everyone. He was battering Hearns, he was beating all, and then he couldn't beat Leonard, you know, and these guys were all beating each other. It was a phenomenal time for boxing, like, you know.
Yeah, so it just sounds that this idea that overall, all round, Khabib Nurmagomedov is a far superior fighter to Conor McGregor. You just don't subscribe to that whatsoever.
No, not at all. I think like you can see it, sure. If you watch the fight back, and maybe like when you're watching something at 6 o'clock in the morning or whatever, and you're like, oh, like this. But if you watch it back and you watch technically what was going on, Conor did quite well defending a lot of the takedowns against the fence. When he got taken down, Khabib only twice really managed to do much damage in the whole fight, and then on the feet looked very suspect other than that right hand he landed. You know, so I think Ferguson's skill set matches up really well against Khabib, and I think like Khabib fights for the takedown, and Ferguson is in the division probably one of the most comfortable guys off his back. Yeah, so it makes for an intriguing matchup, that one.
There is a point too that it's been 2 years really since McGregor has fought at this level. Like,
he looked a little nervous. I don't know if anyone else noticed that. I thought he looked a little. It's the first time I've ever seen that from Conor. I thought even, you know, the bits where he walks into the middle of the cage and does like all his showman stuff looked maybe a little bit forced, you know. I've never seen that from Conor before. Conor is, and I was saying this here, I would have always thought him as one of those athletes that wouldn't suffer from ring rust, you know, but he did look a little bit nervous on the night.
And that could just be the end. Like you could reach that point where it's like, as Andy Lee was saying, you know, you're in there, you're feeling that power for the first time because it's the first time you've been up against Khabib, and it's like, okay, I've had enough now. Yeah. And no one's going to blame him.
No, like the guys, like if Conor said tomorrow he's going to retire, like he's one of the greatest athletes the country's ever produced, like, and he's one of the greatest fighters ever to fight in the UFC. The guy's career is stellar. Like he's taken. There's never been anyone in the sport that's held 2 titles in 2 divisions at the same time, pretty much. Like, you know, so it's. yeah, like whatever he wanted to do, he could have done that a year ago as well, and it wouldn't have been a problem, you know. But I don't know. I don't think that'll sit well with Conor.
Yeah.
From you know, me, what I know of him, I don't think that'll sit well. And I don't think like going out on a loss would be a nice experience for Conor.
So if you're him, what do you want? Do you want Khabib in a rematch, or do you want that other fight to happen first and then you fight the winner of that?
I'd imagine he wants Khabib in a rematch. Like any fighter worth their salt would walk away from a loss and want to get it back. You know, it's a pretty emotional thing to happen to you as well, like to lose a fight. It's gut wrenching, and he'll be. Well, I know from my experience and from talking to Conor and even how he handled Diaz fight, that'll be wrenching at his heart every night.
Yeah, good enough. Looking forward to the rematch was the tweets.
Straight to the point.
So we'll see what the crack is. That I'm going to play you some of this post-match. So here is Dana White first talking to the media after UFC 229.
You weren't going to do anything. Had you suspended Conor for X period of time, that you don't think that would have had any deterrent impact?
Had nothing to do with that. He wasn't coming back and saying he wants to jump over the fence because we didn't suspend Conor. Jumped over the fence because Conor's guy was talking to him.
No, understood. But don't you think that just the fact that it set the tone, like it allowed that to happen, if there had been some...
Do you have any idea how much money it cost Conor?
I don't.
The whole thing, that's millions of dollars.
But the signal, like Khabib doesn't know that, or Khabib's team doesn't know that, and so
they know that.
The argument, the point I'm making, not an argument, I'm asking you a question, would be, it's a deterrent effect. If you say you look in the NFL or wherever they suspended guys for a period of time, it serves as a deterrent to other people to not do that same thing. And I guess that's what I'm saying. Had you taken some action on the UFC part, he violated the code of conduct or whatever you want to say he did, would that not have maybe prevented some of the heated stuff that happened this promotion?
I would, listen, we didn't, so I don't know, but I would say no. If we suspended Conor, I don't think that was going to stop or slow down or hinder the hatred between these two camps. And I'm sure these guys don't give a out suspensions and stuff like this. This is so much bigger than that to these guys. This is some street that's going on here. This isn't sport.
This is some street shit going on here, was the bit that got bleeped out, just for anybody who was uncertain of what Dana White was saying there. It's going to play you what Khabib had to say, and then we'll get Chris's thoughts on this. So this is Khabib speaking after the fight.
First of all, I want to say sorry to Athletic Commission, Nevada, sorry to Vegas. I know this is not my best side, this is not my best side. I'm human being, and I don't understand how people can talk about I jump on the cage, What about he talk about my religion, he talk about my country, he talk about my father. He come to Brooklyn and he broke bus, he almost killed couple people. What about this? Why people talk about I jump over the cage? Why people still talk about this? I don't understand. I am respect. My father teach me, hey, you have to be always respectful. My old team, where I'm training California 7 years, everybody know who I am. All my friends, everybody who know me, they know who I am, And I told you guys, these guys, not only him, his whole team and him, they tap machines. I told you guys, when you put him wrong way, he gonna tap. What happened today? They call him two-time world champion, 2 weight classes, but today he tap. And that's why, alhamdulillah, belt is here, undisputed, undefeated UFC lightweight champion. And and I wanna say something people little bit, it's not people, I think it's media a little bit change MMA. This is respect sport, This is not trash talking sport. This is respect. So I told you before, guys, I want to change this game.
Okay, so you were saying an interesting point there, then what exactly?
It's just when he says, I want to change the sport, I think he'd mentioned something like that in the build-up, and I thought he meant, I'm going to be the greatest of all time, and everybody's going to remember Khabib Nurmagomedov as one of the greatest UFC fighters, one of the greatest mixed martial artists of all time. But actually, when he speaks there, when he says he wanted to change the sport, he wants to change the discourse around the fights. He doesn't want it to go to the level that he believes Conor McGregor brought some of the press conference discourse to, and he wants to change it for the better.
By jumping into the crowd. around.
He did a great job of that.
There you
well,
go.
like he's literally possibly done. No, it's definitely the worst thing that's ever happened in the sport. Like, you know, because like what with the bus incident, as it were, it didn't endanger. Like what? How many people were there? 20,000 people. You know, he jumped into a crowd. All hell could have broke loose there. All hell could. Luckily, no one was hurt at all. Like, and everything's okay now. I think I think the UFC have to come down hard on them. I think they've set their stall out though, so it's going to be difficult for them to do that. So.
But when you hear the questioning of Dana White, where he's asked, you know, did you have any influence over this by allowing McGregor basically to get away with it? Oh, that cost him loads of money.
Yeah.
But it also added millions to the gate receipts and to the pay-per-views.
Yeah.
Like, it was, at the time, you knew that this was going to make the fight between Khabib and McGregor more sellable and more watched and more valuable.
Yeah, and that's the approach they took, rather than let's take a stand for the sport, like, and go, right, this isn't acceptable, you know. Like I said, they're a promotion, not the sport, and like they actually don't really fall under anyone's jurisdiction other than when they fight in a place, the commission of that place, you know.
Yeah.
I think Conor might be, I don't know if this came true, but at the time I remember he was banned from fighting in New York because of what happened. So he's not allowed to fight in New York, so they took their stand.
Yeah.
But the UFC didn't really follow suit, if that makes sense.
It's up to Nevada now. I wonder, is somebody going to have a word? Like, I mean,
But sure, if Nevada banned him, he can fight in New York.
Yeah. Like,
So he's only not allowed to fight in Vegas, you know, so it's up to the UFC to say, we're not going to have him on the cards. That's what has to happen. Dane and the UFC have to go, it's not about Nevada. Nevada can do what they want about him fighting in Nevada. He's not going to find a UFC card for a year. We were just talking about Cantona, same situation, worse situation. He flew and kicked a fan in the face, alright. But like, they just went, you're not going to play football for 9 months. And he wasn't allowed to go and play for France. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't allowed to play for anyone. He was just banned from football for 9 months, and that's what needs to happen.
That's because there was so if Man United had the option, they would have been able to, we'll ban him for 2 games.
Yeah.
He'll say sorry, there'll be a press conference and away we go, because he's their asset.
Yeah.
But instead it was an outside body who was able to do it. And in this instance, there's nobody to do that.
Yeah, well, there is, but they have to be, they're just a governing body of an area, you know what I mean? So the UFC needs to take that role upon themselves, but they're wanting to make as much money as they can, so it's a nasty little situation.
It is. It
Same
really
with
is.
a boxing promoter, like, he's going to do exactly the same thing. If Nevada say this guy can't fight, he's going to put the fight on in New York, you know? So.
What about the other main co-event? Was it as good as everybody's saying?
It's a great fight. Yeah, it was a great fight. Like I said, I think Tony has the potential to beat Khabib, and then Conor has the potential to beat Tony. Tony's just a wild man in there. He's so fun to watch, and he streams like his striking and his submissions so smoothly together. But he's very hittable because his style. He's a very aggressive, kind of crazy style, and I think that would sit well for a fight with Conor.
Okay. Sooner rather than later? Like, how soon can McGregor fight after this?
Well, I think, like, you know, we're asking what the next fight should be for like title contention and all that stuff. It's Tony, especially if Khabib's on the shelf. But if it's about the money fighting interest, it's Diaz 3, I suppose. Like, they're one each, so the rubber matches. I think that'd show the most interest, right? I think people would be more interested in seeing Conor fight. Well, like,
I don't know. I think if I'm
the purists, well, I want to see him fight Tony.
Yeah,
you know, but
I think, and that makes more sense, because then so whoever wins that, it's an eliminator.
Yeah, it's lineage. Yeah.
And you can leave the Diaz fight on the shelf for McGregor's last fight in the UFC. It's like
like
his
a send-off.
farewell.
Yeah.
You know, you get the trilogy and everybody. So if you do that now and he loses, there's nowhere left to go, right?
The UFC haven't shown, like we've been talking about, they've shown an interest in money, and you know, so there's probably a lot more money to be made from the Diaz fight. Like, but yeah, I'd agree with you. I'd like to see him fight Tony next, because I think it kind of ties off that division. Then you know who's who, basically. Like.
And what is the recovery period from a fight like the fight?
I'd imagine it'll probably be like 6 months till Conor fights again. Like, yeah. 5 or 6 months at least, like, I'd imagine. Like, I want a little layoff. I know his wife Dee is expecting soon and stuff like that, so I'd say he'd want a little breather for all that stuff. Like.
What is the physical toll of a fight like that and of being choked out like that?
The choking out, like, that happened to me 4 times a week in the gym. Right. You know what I mean? Like, when you're training, if you're training with good guys, you're getting caught with that stuff. Like, that wouldn't be the stress. it's the build-up, it's the training to get there is what wears on you. You know, the fight itself, isn't it? You have a few knocks and bruises generally after, but it's the 12 weeks getting ready for the fight that'll wear and tear on your body, you know?
Yeah. All right. Chris, great stuff. Thanks very much for that.
Thanks a lot.
You can check out Chris's stuff, obviously, on Twitter and, of course, at the SBG Out in Swords.